Welcome to today's input on the Trinity GESE exam, or the Trinity Graded Examinations in Spoken English. A really very good exam and one of my favorites. I know I have a lot of favorites, but this is another one of them. Really good exam. And what we're going to do today is we're going to look at what it is and how we teach for it. The biggest question about any exam is, what does it test? And for the Trinity GESE, the answer is very clear. It tests communicative competence and linguistic competence. And of course, you will ask, what is communicative competence? And that's a very good question. The question has a relatively simple answer. If you think about someone who is a good communicator, they communicate with clarity. Yeah, they're clear. In order to do that, they also must be a good listener. So a person who listens well is capable of understanding what the meaning is, and when they respond, and they respond with clarity, we can say they have good communicative competence. Simple as that. We also know that if the person we're communicating with has got perhaps wild grammar, has limited vocabulary, has strange phonology, we know that the communication will not be clear simply because we will not understand it. So what the exam does is it says, okay, in each one of the grades in the exam, we will look for certain communication skills, which we'll explore a little bit later, and certain aspects of lexis, grammar, phonology, which we need the candidate to know at that level. So it's a very straightforward exam. I should say at this point that if you are teaching the way we have advised on this course, you will find this exam will suit you perfectly. I needed to put this note here about placement testing because this exam tests communicative and linguistic competence. In other words, what you can do with them. So it's not what you know about language. It's not about the lexis you've memorized or the grammar rules you know, or how much practice you've done with the IPA. It's not about that. It's about your ability to use language. So if you're the teacher on a course for Trinity GESE exam, you want to make sure that your kids are in the right class. You can't develop fluency, you can't develop a naturalness in your communication if you're in the wrong level. Because if you're struggling with the lexis or you're struggling with the grammar, then you can't be fluent in it. And because this exam focuses on communicative and linguistic competence, you need to make sure that your kids are in the right class in the first place. So go back to the input on placement testing and make sure that you have lined up your learners with the various grades in the Trinity GESE exam. All the grades are aligned to CEFR, so the Common European Framework of Reference. So once you do a pre-grading test, if you like, you will know that your students are already on their way to getting a good pass in the exam. This is a handbook stroke syllabus that you will become very fond of. The reason you'll become very fond of it is that it's a very good guide. Within it, you can see everything that's related to the exam in terms of exam form. So the appendices for topics, also examiner report forms, and a number of other things that are really very, very useful. At the back, you can also see per grade a list of what is tested in the grade. Of course, in the rest of the book, you'll see that in more detail, but this is a very, very useful handbook for you as a teacher. So it'll provide an overview of the grades, the timings, the tasks, and so on. But really good book for you to look through. It's not really a book, it's like a handbook. We will attach this for you in a resource list so you can download it and read it to your heart's content. So let's look a little bit more closely at what the examiner is looking for. We know it's all in the syllabus stroke handbook, but we'll review them here just so that you know when you're teaching your lessons that this is the outcome. This is what is going to be assessed, so it's something that you need to keep a good eye on. So the examiner will be looking for communicative skills, lexis, functions, grammar, and phonology within the grade and also of previous grades. So if, for example, you're at grade 3, well, then the examiner needs to know that you've got everything covered from grade 1 and 2 as well. Okay, the examiner is also looking for accuracy. Now, don't worry too much about the accuracy. We're not really expecting that a candidate gets it all right, because chances are if a candidate's getting it all right, they're in the wrong grade. When you're learning a language, you must make mistakes, and a certain number of mistakes are completely okay. So you can do very well in a particular grade and still make mistakes, because the accuracy component is important, but the overriding component is the communicative competence. The examiner is also looking for how appropriate the language is, and by appropriate she means, in this case she means language that is normal and natural. So the kind of language that would be used in a normal candidate and examiner situation. So not hugely informal, not really formal written language, but just normal conversational language. The examiner will also be looking for fluency, and you will ask what is fluency, and some of you may remember that fluency is normally measured by things like response time. So how long does it take to respond? What is the clarity in the meaning? And roughly how reasonably fast is the voice? So is there a good number of words per minute? If the candidate's doing that, well, then the fluency is okay. The examiner is also looking for the candidate to demonstrate a degree of independence. And why that is important is because, remember, this exam is about communicative competence. And if you met someone who never talked to you until you talked to them, or never said anything until you asked them a question, you would think, not a very good communicator. So the examiner really is looking for the development from grade 1 all the way up to grade 12 in the independence of the candidate. Certainly at grade 1, you don't have to be very independent, but certainly as the grades progress, it looks more and more like that the candidate is a major part of the exam. And in fact, when you get to the highest grades, 10 through 12, it looks like the candidate is examining the examiner. Okay, this looks a little bit tricky, but it's not really. All it is an example for you of what the different exams look like. So initial, which is for young to very young learners, is relatively straightforward. It's just a conversation. When you're looking at elementary, you've got conversation and then you've got a topic. So the candidate has a topic which they talk about. When you get to intermediate, same thing, there's conversation and topic, but at intermediate, the candidate does more of the leading of the conversation in relation to the topic. And there's also an interactive task. And in the interactive task, the examiner creates a story, if you like, and the examiner is like someone in the story, and then the candidate reacts to that. So the examiner could say, oh, I don't know, I've got a really bad stomach, and then the candidate responds to that. It's not as simple as that, but that's more or less what it is. At advanced, you've got a lot more, so that the topic is much more detailed. It's much more like a presentation, formal presentation, and then high level of engagement with the examiner. You also will have an interactive task, also a listening task, which is about completion, if you like, or responding to different scenarios. And then, of course, as always, the conversation. You can see that each one of these exams gets longer because more language is tested within it. But it's good for you to see this and see that the progression in the exam is towards greater demand, greater complexity in the tasks, but all governed by an attempt to measure communicative and linguistic competence. A really good challenge for you just now. So you get the opportunity to look through what is being tested in grade 2. You can look through that, take as much time as you like. You can look at the performance descriptors. So what is A, B, C, or D? And after you've done that, and A, B, C, and D are the same descriptors for every grade. So grade 12 or grade 1, the same descriptors apply. So you're going to look at what is in the syllabus for grade 2. You're going to think about it carefully. Then you're going to watch a video of a candidate at grade 2, and you're going to give them a grade. After you've done that, and you can watch the video on the next slide. After you've done that, you can see how your results compare with the results from the examiner.
Hello. Hello. My name's Sandy. What's your name?
My name is Gennaro.
So it's Gennaro Chiuchi or Chiuchi?
Chuki.
Chuki. Sorry. Gennaro Chuki, grade 2. How are you today, Gennaro? Are you
I'm
happy?
8.
Yeah, and are you happy today?
Yes.
Good. And you're 8. Okay. Gennaro. Show me number 8. Oh, thank you. And do you live in a house or a flat?
In a house. My house is composed by 6 rooms. My parents' bedroom is the bedrooms, living room, kitchen, bathroom.
Wow, it's very big.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, look at this picture. Okay. What is this room?
Living room.
This is a living room? Is this a living room? What's this?
Bedroom.
And?
Bathroom.
And?
Kitchen.
Thank you. Now, what is in the living room? Tell me, what are these?
The sofa, the television, desk, chair.
How many chairs?
Next to the desk.
Now, where is the telephone and the door? Where is it?
Between.
Where is the TV with the chairs? Where is the TV and the chairs?
In front of.
Thank you. Where is the flower and the table?
Up.
Thank Thank you. And where is my pen? Where is it?
Under.
Thank you. Put my pen on your head. On your head. Okay. Where is my pen? Where? Where is it?
On the.
Thank you. How many people are in your family?
Your sister. My parents' bedroom.
Your two sisters and you. 3 children in your family? And
My parents'
and your parents. So 5 people in your family.
Yes.
Ah. How old are your sisters?
Remember and Dada.
How old are they? You are 8 or 10. How old are your sisters?
5.
5. One sister is 5 and
2.
a baby. Ah, okay. When is your mother's birthday? Is it January?
39.
Okay. When is her birthday? Is her birthday December? January?
December.
Ah. And when is your birthday?
October.
Uh-huh. And is today Saturday? Now? Is it Saturday? Is it Friday?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Have you got any pets?
Yes. It's a cat.
Tell me about your cat.
My cat is is a grey,
Mm-hmm.
is thin and big.
What's your cat's name? What's the name of your cat?
Chicken.
Cherry. Okay. And how old is Cherry?
Tall, thin, big.
Thank you. And who's your best friend?
Yes, is a Francesco.
Tell me about Francesco.
Is tall and thin.
Uh-huh.
Is a brown eye and black eye.
Ah, okay. And how old is Francesco?
8.
8. Thank you. Show me 8. And 25. 25. 32. Show me 32. Thank you. And what's this?
38.
And
15.
thank you very much. We're finished now. Bye-bye.
I'm going to assume that you can pause this at any time you want to in order to look through the examiner's comments on Gennaro. So do that when you will. After you have looked through the examiner's comments, you are probably going to think immediately about what the teacher should have done. Not so much what Gennaro didn't do in the exam, but what the teacher could have done to make his performance better. And you will be thinking of things like more interactivity, which would build the fluency and the response time, lots and lots of conveyor belt activity and discussing different topics, lots of drilling and substitution by the teacher to build lexical chunks. And when you think about all of that, you can see that while Gennaro in this exam didn't do too well, he scored a C which is enough of a pass at A1 level, which is a very low level, but he got enough for a C. But what you can see is that Gennaro, with some good teaching, would have done a lot better. And I'm sure you're also making a note that when you're doing your own teaching for this exam or any other, there are simple, clear techniques to follow, which I think we've identified on this course. And when you do those techniques, when you follow them, your learners will do much better in exams like this. Okay, the next little challenge is to watch a candidate from a higher grade. So you may recall that at grade 4, as in grade 4, 5 and 6, candidates have to do more. They have to also engage in a topic. So what we're going to look at next is a candidate called Rosario, and he is going to go through his interview, if you like. You're going to have studied this attachment here, which is about grade 4 and the requirements and what the examiner is looking for. And then you're going to watch the video, you're going to review the descriptors, and then you're going to have a chance to give him a grade, and then we will talk again.
Good morning.
Good morning, my name is Rosario, and I'm 19.
Okay, well my name is Sandy. So
Nice to meet you.
it's nice to
Nice to
meet you,
meet you.
Rosario. So it's Rosario Palumbo,
Palumbo.
grade 4.
Okay.
Rosario, may I see your documenti, your ID? Do you have that? Thank you. Do you live near here? Do you live in this area?
Yeah,
Ah.
I live in San Giorgio since 19.
Oh, I see. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much. That's fine. Rosario, we're going to start with your topic. Can I have your topic for me, please?
Yeah, my topic is...
Thank you. So we're going to talk about?
my topic is my interest in music. I'm a singer, a rapper.
Oh, really?
A rapper. I started when I was 14. When I was 14, I make music. I wrote a text with music.
Yeah.
And I opened the concert. I got concert.
Okay. So do you do this alone, just you, or with other people? Or?
No, alone.
I see.
No.
So, what is your favorite type of music?
My favorite type of music is hip hop music. For me, hip hop music is the best. The best music is better than rock, pop, and the other music.
Okay. So, how do you listen to hip hop?
I listen hip hop every day, all day.
Yes, and how? What do you use to listen to?
I listen.
Your phone, or how do you listen? On a CD player?
Yeah. I listen music. I often listen music in the evening, morning when I go when I went to the English school.
Oh, I see. So, you like hip hop and you do rap. Well, what's different about rap and hip hop?
The hip hop is the mother. Is the tree. Is the main tree. The hip hop has for subject.
Oh yes.
Break dance, rap, writing, and make a beat. Make a beat music.
And which do you
For the
like?
song.
Which do you like
And
best? Which part do you like best? Of those 4 parts, which do you like best?
I like rap and make beat music. Music beat.
Okay. And your next project?
I'm going to make a new CD.
Really?
CD for the radio. For the radio, and I make a concert.
When?
My personal concert in Salerno, Ischia.
When are you going to do it?
For example, I will go in Ischia because in Ischia tomorrow there are very important concerts. Concert and there are in this festival there are very important discographic home.
Okay, thank you.
Such as Sony, Universal, Warner.
That sounds very good. Ask me a question about your topic.
Yeah, how often do you listen music? What kind?
Oh, I listen a lot. I listen on my phone, and I like music from different countries. Thank you very much. Now, let's talk about holidays.
My holiday.
Yeah, tell me about a holiday you had last year.
This year,
No, last year, in 2015.
Last year I went in Calabria.
Oh, yeah.
Calabria, Santa Maria especially in Santa Maria del Cielo. It's a very important countries in Calabria. And I went in July and August.
What did you do then?
In Calabria I went to the sea.
Yeah.
To the sea on the beach. I played with my family, with my brother, friend, and we played football, tennis, table tennis.
Okay. And how is Calabria different to this area here?
Calabria is a touristic area. Touristic area, especially for the in Calabria. There is area for English, German, Spanish.
So, tell me some other differences. There are more tourists in Calabria, and what other ways is it different to around here?
In Calabria, especially in Calabria, is better than Castel San Giorgio because in Calabria there is a sea, more beaches, more beaches, and there are many entertainment.
Okay. Well, thank you. Now let's talk about hobbies and sports.
Yes.
So
my hobbies, I have different hobbies. I practice handball.
Oh yeah.
Handball, cycling, sing.
Yeah.
This one hobby.
How often do you play handball?
I play handball twice a week. Twice a week. I played in League 2 in Italy.
Ah, and what
Serie B.
is that? Oh, is that a team?
Sì.
Is it? Okay.
Team, my name team is Handball Lanzana.
Okay.
Yeah. And we played in League 2. This week we go in Puglia because in Puglia there is a playoff for League 1.
This weekend?
No, no.
Okay. Do you play?
1 month ago.
Oh, I
1 month
see.
ago.
So the next competition, when is the next competition for this?
The next competition is League 1.
Okay.
In France, League 2 is more important
Okay.
than League 2.
Tell me about your cycling.
Yeah, I cycling. Now I cycling rally. Rally once a week.
Okay.
Once a week, twice a week.
And describe your bike. Is it a very expensive bike or?
I have a ride bike. Bike for ride.
Is it a mountain bike?
No. Of course.
Okay.
My bike is very expensive. Very expensive. I have a kit for bike.
I see.
Kit, t-shirt, shoes.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. And it's time to finish now. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
You can, of course, pause this anytime you want to, and then think about what the examiner has said. Probably the big takeout before you looked at this was you were listening to Rosario and maybe had a little bit of trouble understanding him. And so did I in parts of his conversation. For us as teachers looking at that, we're already thinking, what could the teacher have done? What would I have done? What would I do if he was my student so that he could perform better as a language user? And clearly you'll be thinking of things like the voice recording that we've looked at in the past, voice recording, transcription and correction. Also comment on sound, very, very important. Also the writing tasks like what I did yesterday with a frequent repetition of that as a writing task so that he could remove some of his errors in terms of past tense and maybe extend his lexis. Also, clearly, things like drilling would be very, very important, and also teacher modeling of language. So teacher modeling the language with the class, and then someone like Rosario and his friends copying teacher model of natural language. Having the teacher model both the examiner and the candidate, and a number of other things that would really do a good job of improving Rosario's language here. So it's quite interesting that Rosario as a language user is quite comfortable with joining a number of words together. He has not had the training necessary to achieve the accuracy and response time that's necessary for a good pass at this level. What you're probably going to notice right away for GESE 6 is the range of lexis, the range of phonology, grammar, communicative skills, and so on. Much greater than you would have noticed for 4 and or for 2. So what we've got here is a level of language that is significantly higher. So we're reaching the end of the elementary stage at about B1.2. So quite a good level of language competence. Your challenge, once again, is to look at this and then watch the video. And after you've watched the video and made your own conclusions on Daniel, you can see the examiner's comments and mine as well.
Hello, my name's Mark.
My name is Daniel, nice to meet you.
Hi Daniel, nice to meet you too. How are you?
I'm fine.
Good. Can I take your identity?
Here you go, of course.
Thanks very much. Great. Now, we're going to start with your topic. What have you chosen to talk about?
I've chosen about to talk the history of mobile phones.
Ooh, okay. Well, tell me first about the pioneers of the mobile phone.
Well, the first pioneer was Dr. Martin Cooper of Motorola. He invented a mobile rig, completely portable, and it wasn't hand size, it weighed 40 kilograms.
Like this?
A brick phone, of course. It had a huge antenna, and it was made of wires. The electricity was wires.
And was it expensive?
Yes, it was the first mobile phone.
What about in the beginning one?
Well, in the beginning, two-way radios, known as mobile rigs, were installed in taxi cabs, police cruisers and ambulances. They were not mobile phones because they were not normally connected to the national telephone network.
So why were they invented? Was it just to have fun?
No, it was another way of communicating.
Between who?
Between two people or more.
Okay. So it wasn't. They didn't invent it to help the police or the ambulances.
They didn't thought of that in the early years. The first mobile phone was a Motorola Dynatac. It actually looked like a rig, a mobile rig. I told you already, it was huge. It had an antenna. Then they resized some mobile phones to 9 kilograms. They were really heavy.
So that's now this big.
Yes, a brick phone actually.
It's still a brick. And did you have to carry it? Did you have to use electricity to make it work, or did it have a battery?
Well, the first rigs were with wires, but the Motorola Dynatac was completely portable. It used no wires, and you could carry it and go like this, like the phones now.
So you didn't have to use it like a normal telephone?
No.
What about mobile phone design between 1973 and 2009?
Well, the design changed a lot because the first mobile phones were huge. They were heavy. They didn't have a display. Unlike now. Now mobile phones can take a picture, play a video, or run thousands of applications from their menus. Nowadays, mobile phones even have games, bigger entertainment for the kids.
And what about the second generation mobile phones?
Well, in the second generation, companies like IDEN invented mobile phones which could send an SMS. The first SMS was sent in the 1991 in the UK, to a machine actually. And 2 years later, two men exchanged an SMS.
And do you think that second generation phones were a big step forward?
Yes, not step, a huge leap forward.
Why? What could you do with a second generation phone that you didn't have to do on a first generation?
First, in the second generation phone, there were screens now. There were big screens which allowed you to see what you're doing. Then the mobile phones were resized. They were actually hand-sized now, and they were really light.
So, third generation mobile phones, we have these today.
Yes, today. Companies in Japan, Tokyo, like NTT Docomo, invented the first touchscreen mobile phones. You know about that, don't you? And slider mobile phones with bigger protection.
What do you think might happen in the future with mobile phones?
Well, it's a bit crazy, but in the future I think mobile phones will float in air. Really? And they will be all touch screens. There will be a big screen and will be a touch and it will float in air.
So we won't have to put them in our pockets?
Yes, in a pocket. Then when you want to get it out, you just throw it in the air and it starts flowing.
Do you think this could happen in 10 years' time?
Yes,
Think it might?
yes.
Do you think it might happen in 5 years' time?
No, it's a huge step for mankind.
Okay, alright.
It's a thing we're not ready for.
Okay. Alright, well, thank you for talking to me about mobile phones. Now, let's talk about something different.
Okay.
Let's talk about learning a foreign language. Now, you've learnt English.
Yes.
What do you have to do to be a good English student?
Well, you have to learn everything you've been taught in class. You have to write your words in your notebook so you can remember them and then use them when you talk to somebody.
Do you have to talk to learn English?
Yes, of course. I think so.
Why?
Well, we from Bulgaria don't speak very much English here, but I know English since 5 years old. And I used to talk a lot English, and I watched a lot of cartoons. That's where I learned English.
And so, do you think you need to watch English in its original language?
Yes, of course. My teacher from my school told me that I should watch at least half an hour TV, English language, no subtitles.
Every day?
Every day. At least half an hour. Or play video games where they talk a lot of English.
And when you're watching English language TV, do you feel that you're studying?
Yes, actually it's studying. If you learn some new words, then you can put them in your topic, like now, of course, which I have done a few times. I have done many projects, and all of this is from watching TV and learning from my books.
So do you have to study grammar to be perfect?
I think grammar is important as well. The grammar is very important.
And let's imagine, in 10 years' time, do you think you will have the ability of a native speaker?
Yes, I think so. If I study a lot, if I don't stop studying, I'll be able to talk like you now.
Okay. Let's also talk about health and fitness. Now, is exercise very important to you?
Yes, I play basketball once or twice a week. Do you play any sports?
Yes, I go to the gym and I swim, but I don't play football and I don't dance.
Well, I expected for you to play football at least.
Yeah, I have a problem with my foot, so it hurts when I play football. What about you? Do you have any special sports that you really like?
Basketball. I liked football before, but I saw I'm not very good at it, so...
Okay. So for you, is it better to watch basketball or to play it?
To play it, of course.
Why?
Well, to play it because you can learn a lot of new stuff. Well, you can learn from watching as well, but I think when you play basketball, you realize that you're actually good at this.
Now, I've never played basketball. What do you have to do to be a good basketball player?
Pass a lot. You have to pass, you have to shoot right, you have to know a lot of stuff.
Do you have to be tall to be a good basketball player?
You see, I'm not tall, but yes. Yes, they're very tall. You have to be tall to play very well.
And one day you might be a professional basketball player?
I don't think so.
No?
No.
Why not?
I don't know. I'm not that good at it. But I try.
But if you practice...
Yes,
you
if
might
I
be.
practice, I might be. But I have to practice a lot.
Okay. And so in 5 years' time, do you think you will play a different sport? Do you think you'll still play basketball, or do you think you'll stop all sport?
I don't know. I'm not very sure. Let's wait for the future to see.
Okay. All right. Well, that's it. We finished. Thank you very much. It was very nice to talk to you.
Me too.
And enjoy the rest of your day. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
You too. Bye.
If you pause this video to read the examiner's comments, you're probably going to read them very quickly and go, I knew already. I knew that Daniel was going to be an A at this level. And certainly in terms of his conversational skills, his fluency, his phonology, everything about his language was very, very good indeed. Good range of lexis, hard to fault. Very probably Daniel's at the wrong grade. He could easily be a significantly higher grade than this and still do very well. What we can see in this though is a relatively young person doing a very good job in terms of using language with a degree of fluency and a high degree of accuracy. Very, very useful for us to look at that and see what can be achieved. I can suggest also that you go to the Trinity site and look at some of the other candidates at this level, just to give yourself another idea of areas of challenge that they have had. But I think that's it for the moment in terms of looking at videos and examiner comments. And now we're going to look at the exams in a little bit more detail and also look at a little bit more of how we should go about teaching them. We know that in the exam that the examiner is looking for communicative and linguistic competence. And so one of your challenges as the teacher is how do you develop that fluency? Now, of course, you have seen a whole lot of other videos which we have done, and you will have very good ideas on this already. But I thought I would just summarize some of the key points here in terms of how you go about achieving conversational fluency. And I think that from the examples that you saw in 2 and 4 and 6, you will see that those candidates who have had a highly interactive learning environment have a much greater outcome when it comes to something like the GESE exam. So that's the first thing really, and that is for good conversational fluency, you need an interactive classroom, and you know how to do that. You've got all the interactive patterns, you've got the focus on meaningful language, you've got the use of tasks, you've got many, many things in which the focus is on the learners using language with one another, and therefore you're going to get a build in fluency. The second thing that you need to be aware of for this is the focus in the exam on both listening and speaking. So in the classroom, you will need to generate tasks in which learners actively listen to one another and speak in reply. Of course, you can break down the listening into some of the tasks that have been done or identified in the input on teaching listening. But remember that you're looking at really learners listening to one another and communicating clearly. Another very significant factor which you drive as the teacher is a class culture that is focused on accuracy. Now that's something that takes a little while to evolve, but certain things that work in your favor are setting up the mirror the English or mirror the translation exercises in which learners are actively interested in copying one another and correcting one another. You want to affirm that, you want to say that's great, and of course any time you've got a learner who's using very accurate language, you want to let them know that you think that that's a really, really good idea. Now, all of those things are very positive, but we've got to remember that this is a test, this is an exam, and so the examiner is looking for certain things, and in part of the exam there will be subjects for the conversation phase. What you want to make sure you've got is good exam resources for that. So make sure you get one of the really good books that are out there on speaking for and listening for the GESE exam. I think we've got a really good selection for you at the end of this in our external resources. Don't forget to visit those, and also remember that there are really good resources on the Trinity website. Remember also that if you want to develop conversational fluency, your learners need to be interested in the conversation. They need to be interested in the dialogue. They need to be interested in the exchange, because then that gives them fluency in their use of language. And then, of course, we know, everyone knows, practice makes perfect. So make sure that any of the tasks that you're doing in class are done again and again with different partners, of course, so you get the benefit in the fluency that inevitably comes from lots of practice. I know we could spend a lot of time looking at accuracy, but we'll look at a few key points just to heighten our awareness, if you like, for how we can do well in this exam. So first thing is the modeling that the teacher can provide. So the teacher obviously at times will model being the examiner, and then the kids will listen and copy the examiner's voice. At times the teacher will model being the candidate, and the students will listen and copy the candidate's voice. So important there, which is a focus on accurate repetition of naturally modeled language. Other thing that we want to remember, as always, is context creates meaning. And in conversation, context is very, very important. So when you're teaching from the book or books at any point, remember to highlight those context questions like who, what, when, where, why, how, so that the learners are thinking about the overall meaning and therefore the essential meaning of language within the context. So very important thing to do. Remember also that substitution drills are vital to developing accuracy, because in those drills you're substituting nouns, verbs, objects, adverbials, and so on. So if you're doing the drilling and you're also doing that by indicating intonation patterns with your hand, then your learners are not only developing accuracy in terms of their grammar or lexis, but they're also developing accuracy in terms of their pronunciation. Remember also that extensive input leads to quality output. So if your learners are reading a lot and listening a lot, then they're getting a lot of accurate data that will enable them to be accurate in the exam. When you look at the list of communicative tasks in the handbook or booklet, you might think, oh my goodness, how am I going to teach these? But then if you stop briefly and reflect on them, and you can do that at any point by pausing the video, you will notice that in your ordinary everyday class, if you're following the advice that we give throughout the course, your students will do this anyway. So in their interactions with one another, they're explaining things, they're asking for things, they're explaining opinions, they're giving opinions, they're justifying opinions, they're doing many of the things that are listed as communicative skills in the exam. Certainly at the higher levels like 7 through 12, you need to give more specific attention to this, but of course, with the aid of a good exam resource, so using one of the good books, this should be absolutely fine. So I know sometimes teachers look at the communicative skills and go, how am I going to do that? When in fact, most classes that are run following the guidance in this course will be doing it all already. So you know already In terms of developing awareness of lexis and functions, first thing you will give attention to is context and all the questions that are associated with context in order to give embedded language meaning. So that's number one. Remember that learning really is using. When learners use language, they develop competence in it. So you want them to use language as much as they can, and you know how to do that already. Remember, as a related point, that short tasks often are a really good way of keeping the language learned alive and therefore readily available to be used. When a learner has a lot of language that is readily available, their response time goes up, and of course the measure of their fluency goes up as well. Remember also that review at the beginning or at the end of a lesson is a very standard and very useful way of making sure that you're getting available lexis and function used in the class and in the next class. Also, as you know, the vocabulary question list, use that as often as you can with readings, with vocabulary lists, and with transcripts from audios. That will mean that the lexical and functional awareness is going up reasonably steadily. Remember also that Lexis lists and Lexis cards are very useful. Lots of good apps for those. Make sure that your learners are adding lexis to their lists, or perhaps adding lexis to cards so that they can review things like synonyms, antonyms, definitions, and example sentences. Remember also that dictionary skills really add value to language. So if our learners are in the habit of looking up a word just for the first meaning, that's not a great use of a dictionary. They should really be looking at a dictionary for things like the word, the pronunciation, the parts of speech, the word or words in context, and then of course actively selecting what one of the meanings is that best suits the language in context. So those are some ideas that will help us to improve the range of lexis and functions and the accuracy in the lexis and functions that our learners bring into the exam. We know that phonological features are going to be tested in the exam, and of course the clever teacher will make sure that they are aware of what is being tested in each grade. But beyond that, you want some pretty general and sound strategies for how you go about improving phonology. You know already, first thing is learn to listen. And when you go back to the input on listening or the input on phonology or on phonics, you will see that a learner who has trained themselves to listen well will develop good phonological features. So make sure you've got that awareness in the first place, and then you've got learners who are developing good skills as listeners, because clear, accurate input, as in they have heard what you have said, means they've got a chance of reproducing that. So lots and lots of interesting things you can do, like you can play audios and get them to copy the voice as exactly as they can. Get them to put on different accents just so they can pretend that they are another person speaking and copying their voice sound. You could do that across a whole range of the Englishes that are available in the world. Remember that when you're teaching phonology, exaggerate. Don't exaggerate, exaggerate. because in that exaggeration, it's much easier to copy what it is that you hear. Remember also lots and lots of practice. You can do things like word counting. You can do, of course, lots of drilling tasks in which you're also drilling intonation patterns. So you might have rising intonation patterns for yes, no questions, falling ones for WH questions, and so on. But fundamentally, let's remember that good phonological features are fundamentally about good listening and good copying. One of the first things that comes to mind when we look at the GESE exam is, why do we have a topic? What's the point? And the answer is quite simply that all of us as normal humans, we have areas of interest. If, for example, I talk to an engineer about engineering, very soon I look like I don't know anything. In fact, if the conversation was in English about engineering, I think I would get a very low grade. But if the conversation was about something in which I was interested and I had therefore the knowledge and the vocabulary that goes with it, then I could display a reasonable level of competence. And this is what the topic is about in the exam. It's about learners choosing something in which they are genuinely interested so they can talk about it with some fluency. Simple as that, really. Obviously, when they talk about it, the examiner is thinking about the exam and the assessment criteria. And we'll look at that in a moment. But fundamentally, the topic is the learner's opportunity to display what they can do with their language, and also to give them an opportunity to interact more directly with the examiner and engage the examiner in some conversation or some question and answer around their topic. Let's take a little look at grade 4. So we know at grade 4 our learner is going to choose a topic that they are interested in so they can talk about it with some degree of fluency. It has to be real, if you know what I mean. If your learner has chosen something that is true for them, then their fluency is going to be much greater. It's very difficult to make up things about a topic that your teacher has given you. Much better if the learner chooses their own. So in this case, the learner has chosen my favorite pastime, which is ice skating. Now that's good. Now you know that Trinity provides topic forms. And for grade 4, the learner can list 4 points that they're going to make. For grade 5, 5 points. For grade 6, 6 points. And that's absolutely fine. Then, of course, what you do is, in working with the learner, you try to develop points that express some of the key aspects of the grammar of the grade. So if we're looking at, for example, grade 4, which we are at the moment, and we need to use the past simple tense, well then, on the topic form, we're going to have a point which is about the past simple. If we need to use a comparative, then we're going to have a point on our topic form, which means that our learner is going to use the comparative, and so on. You don't have to list them all because you can only do 4. And the examiner will, of course, ask questions and guide. But if in the preparation for the topic form, you choose a topic in which the learner is genuinely interested, and you help them in the points that they've made, well then in their conversation with the examiner, they are going to cover most of the language of the grade. So let's assume you've been through the process of choosing the topic, and that can be a little challenge sometimes, because you know that your learners need to express the language of the grade in the topic. And every now and then a learner will choose a topic which is either way too difficult for them, so they can't develop fluency in it, or way too simple for the language that's required at the grade. So for example, if you had a learner who wanted to do grade 6 and they chose My Cat, you might think about giving them some advice about choosing a topic that's more suited to the language of the grade. But aside from that, you know that after the choice in topic, they will be making notes on their topic forms, and then you need to make sure they get lots of fluency-based practice. So not rote repetition, not speech preparation, nothing like that. Lots and lots of practice with their partners on the topic. You're going to do things like pair work to develop some degree of fluency. You're going to do mirror the conversation so that they can check one another's language. You're going to do lots of conveyor belt so that they can build lots of confidence in their language expression by asking and answering with one another in lines. You're also going to provide really good modeling in which you are the candidate and a student is the examiner, and then the class copies you as the candidate. You're also going to be the examiner with a student as a candidate, and the class copies you as the examiner. You will also be the candidate, and all the students get to ask you questions so that they can explore some of the possibilities that they would like to have in their own language, and possibly about one of their topics. So there's a lot you can do there in terms of developing competence for the topic, but remember the key thing is that you're developing fluency, and that fluency requires extended practice in interaction. It's good to know what to do in an exam. It's also very good to know what not to do. And you know that the GESE exam tests communicative competence and linguistic competence. So you know the examiner is not interested in hearing memorized phrases, is not interested in hearing a speech for the topic. The examiner is looking for skills in communication. So please don't give your learners speeches to learn, even though they're great speeches. Don't give them lists of things to work through when they're talking about their family or friends or some such. Give them the opportunity to develop fluency in conversation, and they will do very, very well. Make sure they have learned to listen, because the examiner will ask many different questions. And as you know, a very good communicator is a very good listener. Frequently in exams like this, learners will listen for a keyword and answer the keyword and really ignore the meaning in the question. But that's about it, really. There's a lot more that you can learn about this exam, and as I say, there's lots of good resources out there for you, but I like to think that for grades 1 to 6, we've covered the essentials for you. And I know that if you are preparing your students in a way that drives acquisition in the classroom, they will do very, very well for this exam. So that's it for today. And once again, it's been really lovely to see you, and see you next time.